Part 23. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 221. After dinner, Shen Junqing and Qin Lu chatted with the old man for a while, and then left when they saw that it was getting late. As for Nan Yan, she went upstairs after dinner to prepare a new stage of medicine for Lin Ziyan. "Sister, are you still busy?" Zhang Nai knocked on the door and asked cutely at the door. "Huh? I'm done." Nan Yan divided the refined pills into bottles, and then looked up at Zhang Nai. "Is there something?" "No." Zhang Nai stuck out her tongue. "I just want to talk to my sister." "If you are busy, then I won't bother you." Although she was born in poverty, she suffered so much unfair treatment and was bullied during her growth. But she has a positive heart. "Life kisses me with pain, but I repay life with songs." This is her mentality. Life is her own. She cannot choose to be born, but she can choose her attitude towards life. She must work hard to make her life bloom with color. Nan Yan packed up everything, wiped her hands with disinfectant wipes, then walked to the door, rubbed her little head, and whispered, "Let's go, let's talk in my room." Turning on the light in her room, Nan Yan picked 2 lychee-flavored lollipops from the coffee table, handed one to Zhang Nai, sat on the sofa, slowly peeled one, and put it in her mouth. "What do you want to talk to your sister about?" "Life." "Sister, can I always follow you?" Zhang Nai held the lollipop, her face a little nervous. "I won't eat in vain. After I graduate, I will go to work, and give you all the money I earn." She didn't want to go back to the welfare home. Although it was where she grew up, she also had a deep gratitude for it. But only by staying with Nan Yan, she would have the opportunity to realize her dream. She didn't want to be an ordinary person who was muddle-headed and lived her life step by step. Once, she thought that her life would just pass by like this. Until she met Nan Yan. In a few days, she had thought it through very clearly, and she was more and more determined about what she wanted to do. Only when she became strong could she be able to repay the Dean mother who raised her and protect her younger brothers and sisters. "Not impossible." Nan Yan held a candy in her mouth and spoke softly, "but staying by my side requires requirements." "Sister, you say?" Zhang Nai looked at her with sparkling eyes. Nan Yan's voice was not hurried, and she said slowly, "I have learned about your grades. According to your ability, it is not a problem to get the first place in the school, but I ask you to get into the top 3 in the city. If you can get it, you can not only stay by my side, but I will pay for your tuition, living expenses, and any interest you learn in the future." Zhang Nai bit her lip, a trace of determination flashed across her eyes, and she said firmly, "Sister, I will definitely work hard to do well in the exam and will never let you down." Nan Yan reached out and patted her head. "Come on." "Yeah." Zhang Nai blushed. "Sister is really beautiful, more beautiful than any woman she has ever seen. Not only beautiful, but also so powerful. She had to work hard to make herself like her sister and not be bullied by anyone again." Hashtag. The next day, Nan Yan was woken up by a phone call. She opened her eyes and looked at the time. It was 5:30. She still had half an hour before she got up at 6 to exercise. She rubbed her dizzy head and answered the call. She hadn't woken up yet, and her voice was a little nasal. "Brother, you're here so early, do you have anything to do?" Qin Lu's low and pleasant voice came slowly, "I want to confirm if you have anything to do today." "Nan Yan. There's something wrong." He woke her up early in the morning just to ask if she had anything to do. Before she could speak, Qin Lu's voice sounded in the receiver again, "Brother doesn't want to be stood up again." Nan Yan pinched her eyebrows. He seemed to be blaming her for making him run for nothing yesterday. She was not right about this. "Nothing to do today." Nan Yan's sleepiness disappeared, and her voice returned to normal. Qin Lu could imagine the unhappy look of the little girl, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. "Don't eat at home, Pack up and I'll pick you up. Nan Yan immediately realized that Qin Lu wanted to have breakfast with her. Come over at 7:30. Okay. Qin Lu smiled and answered, then hung up the phone. He then told Wu Yu to put the plane on standby. On the other side, Nan Yan didn't sleep anymore. She was awake, so she might as well go to training half an hour earlier today. Zhang Nai was used to getting up early, and she got up at about 5 o'clock to help the servants clean up. She lived and ate here for free, and always wanted to find something she could do to be busy. The servants said they didn't need her help, but she still got up early every day and didn't listen to their advice. The servants couldn't do anything about her, so they had to let her help with the work. Nan Yan came down to exercise, and happened to see Zhang Nai busy in an apron and sleeves, so she called her. Xiao Nai. Zhang Nai saw her and hurried over. Sister, it's the weekend today, why are you up so early? What are you doing? Zhang Nai said with a smile, I'm used to being busy at the welfare home on weekdays. I'm free anyway, so I want to find something to do. Nan Yan looked at her, you don't have to do these things. If you have this time, you should review your homework more. The high school entrance examination will be in 1.5 months. You should focus on your studies. Zhang Nai bit her lip, and then she said seriously, Sister, I will never give up studying. Then you can arrange your own time. After the high school entrance examination, think about what you want to study, and I will find a teacher for you. Thank you, sister, Zhang Nai nodded quickly, then I'll get to work first. Go ahead. Zhang Nai trotted back quickly. Looking at her busy back, Nan Yan curled her lips and started her daily exercise. At 7:30, Qin Lu arrived on time. After Nan Yan took a shower, changed her clothes and went downstairs with her mobile phone. She saw him already sitting on the sofa waiting for her. She combed her smooth long hair with her fingers a few times and walked to him. Brother, let's go. Hashtag. The two returned to the Landis Hotel from their old home. Then drive directly to the tarmac. Looking at the private jet that was on standby and ready to take off at any time, Nan Yan raised her eyebrows. Brother, where are you going to take me? Qin Lu parked the car at the designated location and explained, there is an auction today, and I just want to take you to have fun. Nan Yan. Is this a tacit understanding? Yesterday, she was still thinking about finding a few auctions to send her T-1 reagents to auction. Boss Jean took her to the auction site today. Breakfast is prepared on the plane, as well as a dress for you to wear. Oh. Really thoughtful. After boarding the plane, Wu Yu was already inside. The interior decoration of the private jet is very luxurious, the space is large, and there is a large bed measuring 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. Qin Lu said warmly, eat breakfast first. If you are still sleepy after eating, go and take a nap. We have to fly in the sky for 3.5 hours. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 222. Nan Yan rolled her eyes at him. She was so energetic now, how could she sleep? Qin Lu guessed what she didn't say, and a smile appeared in his eyes. Then he took her hand and went to have breakfast first. The breakfast was prepared by the Landis Hotel and was very much to her taste. After spending a long time together, Qin Lu was slowly collecting Nan Yan's preferences, wanting to understand her and give her the best. Nan Yan felt that this man had suddenly changed his temper. He didn't eat a good meal, but kept staring at her. Can you be full just by looking at her? After breakfast, Wu Yu quickly put away all the food on the table, and then left the room wisely, not being a light bulb here. After eating and drinking, Nan Yan leaned lazily on the soft sofa, tilted her head and asked softly, which auction are we going to? When she was in Country M, she had a relationship with the organizers of several famous large auctions. But in the current situation, she didn't want to go to them unless necessary. At least before she has a certain strength, she doesn't plan to reveal her identity. Qin Lu just opened his laptop and heard her ask, his cold eyes stared at her gently, "Have you heard of the Marburg auction venue?" Nan Yan shook her head, no. She was unfamiliar with the name of this auction venue. It seems that it is not the main venue of the West. Qin Lu's fingertips gently stroked her hair and chuckled slightly, "The scale is not bad, just relax and go over to play." The child doesn't like him always touching her head. So, he tried his best to restrain his thoughts and change to other ways of touching. It's just that the warm and doting eyes are so frank and flamboyant. Nan Yan couldn't help but tremble her long and thick eyelashes because of his cherished action. This man is simply too wanton to show his charm. She can't stand it. Nan Yan retracted her gaze and used the posture of looking at the phone to cover up her strangeness. For a while, the two were busy with their own things and didn't talk anymore. Qin Lu was very busy, and almost all the time he was on the road was used by him to work. Except when he drove himself and didn't bring his notebook, he kept his notebook in his hand most of the time. Nan Yan had things to do herself, and although there were not many contacts on her phone, they were all very important people. She also agreed to ask Zhang Lingxian to help her, and Zhang Lingxian contacted her more frequently in the past few days. Tao Qingming would ask her some questions about Chinese medicine from time to time. As long as she saw it, she would try her best to explain it to him clearly. There was also Marcus, who always thought he was out of favor, the enthusiastic Qin family's eldest daughter Qin Shiu, the old lady Qin, Lin Zian. Nan Yan's phone was almost always so lively. 3.5 hours passed very quickly, and before they knew it, they had arrived at their destination. The plane reminded them to prepare for landing, so the two put away their phones and notebooks. After getting off the plane, there was already a special car waiting here, all the way directly to the hotel where they were staying. There is still the Landis Hotel under the Qin family here, and the most luxurious rooms are also exclusive to Qin Lu. And today, because of the auction, all the rooms have been booked. Even the most ordinary standard rooms are gone. Nan Yan and Qin Lu, inevitably, live in the same room. However, there are 2 bedrooms in the presidential suite. Although they are in the same room, they don't have to sleep in the same bed. Otherwise, Nan Yan thinks that one of them has to sleep on the sofa today. After putting the dress she brought into the closet and packing it up, she went to the living room. Just as she sat down on the sofa, Qin Lu came over with a lollipop in his hand. "Little friend, eat candy." With a smile in his voice, he peeled off the candy wrapper of the lollipop and stuffed it into her hand. Nan Yan glanced at him, and without being polite, she put the lychee-flavored lollipop in her mouth. Qin Lu sat beside her naturally, and said in a low voice, "The auction will start at 7 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. We are expected to return to Jinqing at 1:30 a.m. It won't delay your class tomorrow, right?" No. She was here, and he told her this, what else could she say? 1:30 a.m., for her, is not too late. Staying up all night is a common thing for her, and sleeping a few hours later naturally has no effect. "What do you want to eat for lunch?" Nan Yan bit a candy and casually asked, "What special meals are there here?" She is not very picky about food, as long as it tastes good. "I'll let Wu Yu arrange it." Wu Yu, who had just been free for a while, received the order from Mr. Qin and went to arrange the restaurant without stopping. Hashtag. This is a foreign country with a time difference of 3 times from China, and the customs and habits are completely different. Qin Lu held Nan Yan's hand and walked on the street. Nan Yan was too lazy to break free, so she let him hold her hand. After all, she broke free when she just went out, but he held her tighter. And Qin Lu had a good reason, saying that this place was very chaotic and she was not allowed to stay too far away from him. Haha. It was all excuses. If anyone who didn't have eyes dared to find trouble with her, that would be asking for trouble. But she didn't resist the feeling of being cared for. In the most upscale restaurant in the area, Qin Lu looked at the girl sitting opposite him and said in a gentle voice, "Do you like the food? If you are not used to it, there is also a Chinese restaurant here." "It's okay," Nan Yan said, and took another bite casually, commenting, "It's a bit special, not unacceptable." She has never been picky about food and clothing, and the taste of this restaurant is indeed okay. She said she wanted to try the local specialties, and she couldn't go against her own face. Qin Lu looked at her, lowered his head helplessly, and sent a message to Wu Yu. "Tell him to buy some things Nan Yan likes to eat." After sending the message, he reached out and held Nan Yan's hand. "If you don't like it, don't force yourself." Nan Yan put the tableware in her hand on the table. "I don't like it." But she tried 2 bites and really didn't adapt to the appetite here. Qin Lu laughed softly, "That's because I don't like it, just think of it as accompanying me." "That's fine." Nan Yan was quite natural, pushing the plate in her hand away, without any reluctance. Looking at her hypocritical look, Qin Lu inexplicably felt very cute. The child is obviously not very old, but he is always so calm and restrained, strong and distressing. It seems that he still needs to pamper them a little more, so that the little one can do whatever he wants without worrying about anything else. Wu Yu bought some food that the two of them liked in the Chinese restaurant without stopping, and sent it over quickly. Originally, the restaurant receptionist saw that he was carrying food from other restaurants and did not allow him to enter. But after Wu Yu stuffed a few banknotes into them, he happily opened the door and let him in. "Master, Miss Nan, Wu Yu was halfway through his words when he was suddenly grabbed by the collar by a tall and strong man and dragged back violently. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 223. Wu Yu had not yet put down the food he was carrying. He was afraid that it would knock over, so he did not resist. But the man didn't intend to stop there. He cursed and slapped him with hands that looked like cattail leaf fans. Qin Lu and Nan Yan took action at the same time. And there is a tacit understanding that one person can use his hands, and the other can use his legs. Plop. The man who had been so aggressive just now knelt on the ground in embarrassment, covering his hand that had been completely penetrated by the fork and screaming. Wu Yu blinked. Is he being protected by Master Qin and Miss Nan? This is such an honor. The movement here attracted many people, even the guests dining in the restaurant were looking at them. The person in charge of the restaurant came over immediately. After seeing clearly that both Qin Lu and Nan Yan were Orientals with yellow skin, there was obvious contempt in their eyes. "How is this going?" he asked angrily in English with a heavy accent. The screaming man covered his hands and said angrily, "He brought food from another restaurant in. I wanted him to get out, but they started beating him." When the person in charge heard this, his face became even more gloomy, and he turned around and asked, "Who gave you the courage to take action here? Now you should immediately apologize to Robin, compensate him for his losses, and get out of this restaurant. We will not accept barbarians from China here." When a group of spectators around heard this, they all started to boo at this moment. Chinese people in foreign countries are often marginalized. This kind of thing has happened countless times in this place. But every time, the Chinese ended up dejectedly apologizing, and then left the restaurant amidst their ridicule. They thought that this time would be no exception. However, while they were waiting for a few people to apologize in embarrassment, Qin Lu was like an emperor, sitting calmly on his seat without making any movement, and said in a low and cold voice, "Wu Yu." After Wu Yu put the things in his hands on the dining table, he lowered his head to Qin Lu and said, Master. Call someone to smash this place up. His cold and plain words didn't even change his expression much, but the breathtaking aura of his body spread out invisibly. He also spoke English. Almost everyone present could understand it. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this arrogant Chinese man brazenly threatening to destroy this place. The owner of this restaurant is a powerful local man. He actually dared to say such nonsense that he would destroy this place. You want to destroy this place? The person in charge was also shocked, and then sneered, you are domineering in your own country, do you think you can still show off your power here? Just because of your words, I won't let you out of this gate today. Qin Lu didn't take him seriously at all. He condescended to take out the packaged meals one by one and put them on the table. Yan Yan, eat first. His gentle voice made no secret of his doting on her. Nan Yan didn't care that there were so many people around looking at them. He casually took the chopsticks handed over by Qin Lu and started eating. You are actually still in the mood to eat? The person in charge's face became more and more contorted, and he took a step forward, wanting to overturn their table. The coldness in Qin Lu's eyes deepened. Interrupting children's eating is seeking death. Before the person in charge touched the table, Qin Lu took action first, standing in front of him with a long leg and a tall figure, and then kicked out. The body of the person in charge was like a kite with its string broken, flying upside down for 3 to 4 meters before hitting a dining table, hitting it, and rolling to the ground. There was a crackling sound, and he was poured with soup and water all over his body. Ah! The screams were earth-shattering. The expressions of those who were watching couldn't help but change, and they all calmed down at the moment. I am afraid that the next person to be beaten will be me. The security guard from the restaurant came over, and the person in charge covered himself with difficulty. Come on, beat him to death. A group of strong security guards surrounded him, but they couldn't hold him up for even a minute. They all screamed and rolled on the ground. But Nan Yan was not affected at all. While Qin Lu was beating him, he still ate quietly and elegantly. Seeing that Qin Lu was fine, she raised her head and said, "Brother, if you don't eat, the food will get cold." "Good." Qin Lu responded lightly and sat back to his original position gracefully. Then, Nan Yan handed him a pack of disinfectant wipes. "I just beat someone up and my hands are stained with bacteria and I need to disinfect them before I can eat." Qin Lu curled his lips and smiled, then opened the wet wipes and wiped his hands clean carefully. The two of them started eating like no one else was around. And there was no one around who dared to speak loudly. Except for a few people who were still lying on the ground screaming. 10 minutes later, Wu Yu brought people back. Nan Yan and Qin Lu were basically full. Wu Yu glanced at the person lying on the bed, then walked to Qin Lu, lowered his head and asked, "Master, do you want to start now?" Qin Lu opened his mouth coolly and said one word, "Smash." Wu Yu turned his head and said to the people he brought, "Did you hear the young master's instructions? Be smart and smash everything here." "Heard it?" A neat shout. Then, a group of people holding iron bars, hammers, axes and other tools began to smash the decorations and furnishings in the venue. When the diners saw this situation, they dared not stay here any longer. They ran out without even paying the bill. Other waiters saw that the situation was not right and also fled out. Some people hurriedly informed the big boss and reported the situation here. Wu Yu looked at the two people who were motionless and asked cautiously, "Master, Miss Nan, I will move the seats outside. You sit outside and watch." Qin Lu stood up and stretched out his hand to Nan Yan. "Let's go, Yan Yan, there will be too much dust here soon." Nan Yan hit his palm and borrowed his strength to stand up. After the two went outside, the people who were constructing inside let go of their fists and feet and smashed more happily. After all, when they were there before, they had to worry about whether they would be injured by mistake. After smashing the decorations inside, They smashed the tables and chairs. Anyway, it was stuff, so they had to smash it all. The sound of ping-pong was endless. Nan Yan tilted her head, looked at the man beside her who was as cold as an emperor, and asked calmly, "Will there be trouble if you are so arrogant?" "Little friend, you asked the wrong question." Nan Yan didn't understand what he meant. What did she ask wrong? In someone else's territory, he beat up someone else's people and smashed their store. Shouldn't you worry about being in trouble? Qin Lu's dark eyes were full of cold anger. "You should ask, if you offend me, the owner of this restaurant, will you get into trouble?" Nan Yan. The boss is really a boss. No matter where he is a boss. But if it were her, even if she knew that she would offend someone, she would not swallow this breath. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 224. Wait for the restaurant's investors to come here after knowing what happened here. This place has almost become a ruin. Except for the main body of the house, everything inside and the sign outside have been turned into slag. Originally, his face turned livid and ferocious when he saw this scene. However, when he saw Qin Lu, who was like an emperor, his expression suddenly changed. He restrained his anger in an instant, walked closer, and said almost flatteringly, "Mr. Qin, I didn't know you were coming. I didn't welcome you from afar. I hope you don't blame me." Nan Yan made a tisk. Sure enough. The reputation of Mr. Qin is not only famous in China, but also abroad. Qin Lu glanced at him casually and said indifferently, "Is this restaurant yours?" "Yes, it's mine." The man did not relax at all, but became more nervous because of Qin Lu's words. "I don't know what this restaurant did wrong and offended Mr. Qin. Tell me, I will definitely ask them to change it. Its existence is a mistake." The man obviously didn't expect Qin Lu to say this, and he was even more frightened. He quickly changed his words, "Then it's better not to exist. I will have people demolish this place and rebuild a department store." "Mr. Qin, do you think this is okay? No need to be so troublesome, change it into a Chinese restaurant." "Okay, I will arrange for someone to renovate it." The man nodded hurriedly. "Mr. Qin, you came here specifically to attend the auction tonight. If you don't mind, I can be your guide." "I need you to be a guide," Qin Lu sneered, "nothing else, don't bother me." "Yes, yes." The man didn't look unhappy at all, nodding and bowing, like an obedient pug. This situation completely dumbfounded the restaurant manager, who originally thought that the boss would come to support them. "Why, is it like this? What is the identity of that man?" However, they were not worthy of knowing all this. However, Nan Yan's evaluation of Qin Lu was improved because of this incident. Leaving behind a group of people who were completely confused, Qin Lu took Nan Yan's hand and left here. There were still more than 5 hours before the auction started, and Qin Lu wanted to take Nan Yan around here to see the different customs and practices. It was probably because they became famous in the restaurant that they did not encounter any troubles afterwards and spent an afternoon in peace. Nan Yan also bought a lot of souvenirs on a whim and planned to give them back to her friends. Hashtag. Time flew by and it was 6:30 in the afternoon. Qin Lu, dressed in a suit and leather shoes, stood in front of Nan Yan's room and knocked on the door. "Yan Yan, have you changed your clothes?" "Yes, wait a moment." Nan Yan put down her lipstick, then took off the hairpin that fixed her hair, combed it with her 5 fingers, and curled the long hair with some arcs at the end. Raising her eyebrows in the mirror, Nan Yan was quite satisfied with her current appearance. She stood up from the dressing table, stepped on the soft carpet with bare feet, and went to open the door. "Brother, where are my shoes?" Qin Lu leaned against the doorframe, holding a cigarette between his fingertips and about to light it. When the door opened, he saw the girl in a dress and light makeup, and his heartbeat suddenly jumped. He always knew that Nan Yan was beautiful. But he didn't expect that she could be so stunning. A face of top temptation, with eyebrows and eyes, captivating. Yan Yan. Qin Lu did not hide the surprise in his eyes, and his palm was placed on her waist. The hoarse tone, listening carefully, was mixed with a few tremors. At this moment, Qin Lu had to admit that the child he had always thought of was actually an adult. Coquettish, mature, sexy, charming. Nan Yan raised her eyebrows and smiled, and put her hand on his chest. Brother, do you want to be a hooligan? Qin Lu looked at her with burning eyes. Can I? Nan Yan looked at him with interest, and her true nature, which had been restrained, was faintly released. She stared at the beautiful face close at hand, and licked her rosy lips with the tip of her tongue. And her heart, which was covered by her palm, suddenly beat faster. Man. Still teasing her. Nan Yan was in a happier mood, and then, she used her palm to push Qin Lu against the door panel. A standard Waldong posture. The only flaw was that she was not wearing high heels, and she was a head shorter than Qin Lu in height. So she didn't overwhelm him in terms of aura. She raised her chin slightly, looked at him with a wicked smile. It's not impossible. This was the answer to his previous question of can I? Who doesn't know how to be a hooligan? This bastard has flirted with her so many times, she should be allowed to flirt back. Qin Lu's eyes darkened, his aggressive gaze brewing danger. At this time, Nan Yan took the initiative to attack, hooked her hands around his neck, stood on tiptoe, and stopped when she was 1 centimeter away from his lips. A pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes stared at him evilly and wantonly. Brother, how do you want to be a hooligan? Qin Lu's body tensed up instantly, and he could hardly restrain himself, and embraced her delicate body in his arms. If it weren't for reason reminding him, he couldn't guarantee what he would do. With his big hand on her waist, Qin Lu gritted his teeth and whispered in a hoarse voice, Yan Yan, aren't you afraid that your brother will lose control? Nan Yan blinked innocently. Brother, are you so easy to lose control? Qin Lu. He felt that the little guy did it on purpose. She was sure that he didn't dare to do anything to her, so she deliberately provoked him. Qin Lu couldn't help but sigh. What else can he do to his beloved little ancestor? Qin Lu gritted his teeth and lowered his head to bite her neck. But his teeth touched her delicate skin, and he couldn't bear to hurt her, so it became a kiss as light as a feather. Nan Yan's body trembled unconvincingly. The bad energy just now was all released at once. Feeling the girl in his arms stiffen, Qin Lu pulled the corner of his mouth. Remember it now, and pay it back later, little friend. Someone deliberately lowered his voice and said something sinister, which successfully made Nan Yan's back cold. Qin Lu stopped teasing her, patted her back, and let her go. Go sit on the sofa for a while, I'll get you shoes. If he keeps going on, he might not be able to guarantee that he can stay rational. Nan Yan's face was flushed, but fortunately she had applied some blush before, and now the color is a little darker, so it won't look too obvious. Not long after, Qin Lu came over with a pair of high heels. Before Nan Yan reached out to take it, he squatted down in front of Nan Yan. Then he held her feet with his noble and powerful hands and helped her put on the shoes gently. Nan Yan pursed her lips, her expression seemed indifferent. But in her heart, there were layers of ripples. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 225. This man is really tempting her all the time. Wu Yu just came in and asked when to set off. As soon as I came in and saw this scene, I almost went blind. Damn it! What did he see? There Mr. Qin actually squatted on the ground and put on Miss Nan's shoes. Is he crazy, or is the world crazy? Wu Yu couldn't bear the sudden stimulation. Before screaming, he quickly stuffed his fist into his mouth. A cry of surprise turned into a whimper. Nan Yan caught a glimpse of his funny behavior, and her out-of-control emotions were slowly suppressed with a chuckle. All right. Qin Lu calmly helped Nan Yan put on both shoes before standing up. His eyes swept towards Wu Yu casually. Wu Yu turned around quickly and said with a strong desire to survive, "Master, I didn't see anything." Looking back, Qin Lu looked at the girl and said warmly, "I'm going to wash my hands and I'll set off when I get back." Okay. Nan Yan suppressed her smile, but there were still smile lines in her eyes, and nodded. Hashtag Marlborough Auction Grounds. In a few minutes, the auction is about to begin. The people who came to participate in the auction had basically entered the venue and were sitting in their respective seats. The rules of the auction are that when the time comes, the door of the venue will be closed, and guests who have not arrived in time will not be allowed to enter. Before the auction ends, no one in the venue is allowed to leave. Only after the auction is over and the dinner party is held, is everyone's time for free activities. Qin Lu brought Nan Yan here because he was stuck. It was less than a minute before the venue doors were to close. Two guards standing in front of the auction venue's gate stopped them. "Sorry, the venue's gate will be closed. Anyone who has not entered is not allowed to enter." Wu Yu said, "It's about to be closed, which means it's not closed yet. It won't even take 5 seconds to get in from here. Did you stop it too early?" The guard pointed to the clock and said, "It's time." Another guard then said, "Please leave." Nan Yan clicked his tongue. The dignified Mr. Qin came to attend an auction, but he was blocked outside and couldn't even enter. If word spreads, will people gloat about my misfortune? Qin Lu looked down at a certain child and said calmly, "Give them the invitation letter." Wu Yu took out the invitation letter and handed it to them. When the two guards saw the invitation letter Wu Yu took out, their expressions suddenly changed, and their attitude suddenly turned 180 degrees and became more respectful. Invitations are different from invitations. Qin Lu's one is obviously a platinum invitation reserved for the most distinguished guests. There can definitely be no more than 5 invitations like this. The guard respectfully returned the invitation to Wu Yu and apologized quickly, "I'm sorry, Mr. Qin, you are a distinguished guest of the auction. You don't have to abide by the time. Please come in." During this delay, the door to the venue has been closed. The guard opened the door again, and the two men stood on both sides of the door, bowing and inviting him in. Because the door was closing and opening abnormally, almost everyone in the auction house looked at the two of them. After seeing the appearance of the two of them clearly, they couldn't help but whisper, curious about Qin Lu's identity. Under the gaze of everyone, Qin Lu held Nan Yan's hand with an indifferent expression and went directly to the first row at the front. Sitting in the first row, those noble people who symbolized status and power took the initiative to say hello to Qin Lu. Qin Lu nodded and responded. Then, the two of them sat in the middle 2 seats, which had the best visual effect. Nan Yan was thoughtful. Boss Qin's identity is not simple. Some of the people in the first row were actually known to her. There are several well-known rich people in country M. To meet them here. However, they did not recognize her. Except for Marcus and his who, no one in this world knows her true identity. Nan Yan suppressed all the emotions in his eyes, leaving only a hint of coldness. Sooner or later, she will get back those things that originally belonged to her. Let the scum who hurt her and her family pay the heaviest price. "Yan Yan, what are you thinking about?" Qin Lu gently squeezed her palm, and a low and sweet voice sounded in her ears. "Nothing." Nan Yan dispelled the coldness in her eyes and glanced at the hands of the two people still holding each other as if nothing had happened. Then he raised his eyebrows and said, "Brother, I won't run. There's no need to keep holding her hand like this, okay?" Yet Qin Lu heard the implication of her words and chuckled. Not only did he not let go of her hand, but he became even more domineering and intertwined his fingers with hers. Those dark eyes looked at her with a smile, but, brother just wants to hold your hand. Nan Yan. She always felt that this man was becoming more and more unscrupulous towards her. Would you like some candy? Nan Yan looked at him lightly, licked her lips and said, yes. Qin Lu took out a lollipop from his suit pocket, peeled off the candy wrapper with one hand, and then brought it to her mouth. Nan Yan was a little doubtful. Is Qin Lu treating her as a child or a woman? While doting on her like a daughter, he flirted with her crazily and without being a human being. Is he really smart? This is a good question. Biting a lollipop, Nan Yan looked at the two people's clasped hands in silence, took out her phone calmly, and typed with one hand. On the auction table, the auctioneer gave a concise opening speech and soon entered the auction process. Nan Yan was still a little curious about the auction items, and picked up the album on the table in front of them. As she was watching, an auction sign was placed on the album she was looking at. If you like something later, take pictures of it. Brother has nothing else but money. Qin De Lao's words sounded like a domineering president. Nan Yan didn't say politely to him, yeah. Many wealthy businessmen around wanted to find an opportunity to get in touch with Qin Lu. As a result, Qin Lu's eyes were on the woman he brought with him throughout the whole process, and he didn't mean to pay attention to them at all. Everyone couldn't help but speculate about the relationship between him and Nan Yan. It's all because Mr. Qin doesn't like women, so what is in front of them now? It seems that it's not that Mr. Qin doesn't like women, but that he didn't see the person in his eyes before. A hero cannot resist the temptation of beauty. Look at the little fairy beside Mr. Qin. She is simply the best in the world. Not to mention Mr. Qin, even they can't help but feel excited when they see her. If they want to get close to Mr. Qin today, this woman may be a breakthrough. Therefore, when the auction items include jewelry suitable for women, they will become the object of competition among the rich merchants in the first row. When the first ruby brooch was bought by a rich businessman, he stood up and said with a smile on his face, "This auction item is very suitable for the beautiful lady beside Mr. Qin, so give it to her." Nan Yan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 226. Nan Yan glanced at the cold-faced Qin. Silently, she lit a candle for someone who didn't know how to flatter. She wanted to flatter the men around her by flattering her. This trick might work for others, but for Qin Lu. Qin Lu suppressed his displeasure and said coldly, "No need. I will take pictures of what she likes." The rich businessman didn't realize that he was in danger yet, and said flatteringly, "Mr. Qin, you're welcome. This is a little gift from me." Qin Lu's eyes were deep, and he didn't hide his displeasure. His powerful aura rushed towards the man. "Why, do you think I can't afford this little money and want you to do it for me?" The man realized that Qin Lu was really angry, and his face suddenly turned pale. No. No. He just wanted to take this opportunity to flatter him, but who knew that he didn't flatter well and flattered the horse's hoof. Nan Yan propped up her head and said jokingly, "Brother, can I take something that's given for free?" She didn't like that thing, but it was worth millions of dollars anyway. When the time comes, she can sell it and get a lot of money for free. No, Qin Lu looked at her indifferently. "Whatever you want, brother will give it to you." "Okay. The answer has been determined long ago." She pulled the corner of her mouth and continued to look through the unfinished album. When the album turned to the last page, her expression changed slightly. "This is a ginseng that has grown for at least 500 years. It can be regarded as a treasure of heaven and earth, and it is extremely difficult to find the ginseng king. Even on the dark domain trading website, The highest age ginseng she found was only more than 200 years old. Now there is a 500-year-old ginseng here, and she must get it. This will be of great help to Mr. N's health. Brother, your wallet is bleeding. Nan Yan tapped on the album with her fingers, motioning him to look. This kind of heavenly treasure that is rare in 100 years is inestimable in value. Moreover, 500-year-old ginseng is rare and has almost transformed. From the surface alone, it is very close to the shape of a human. The auction price may reach a terrifying height. Before she was reborn, she had seen a 300-year-old ginseng at an auction in M country, which was sold at a sky-high price of 150 million. This one, she predicted, might cost more than 300 million to get. Qin Lu put his black card in her hand. If you want it, just go and bid, don't worry about the money. Nan Yan wants it, no matter how expensive it is not a problem. Okay. Nan Yan took his bank card calmly without any hesitation. Anyway, after getting the ginseng, she will make it into pills and give it to Madame Qin and him, so he will not lose. Except for ginseng, there is nothing in the album that she likes, and the auction time is very long. Nan Yan simply turned on her mobile phone and browsed the web to kill time. As she was watching, a message popped up. Marcus, Yan, I should go to M country. Nan Yan. Marcus, something is going on in the lab, I need to go back. Nan Yan, well, if there is something you can't solve, contact me again. The poison in Marcus' body has been almost cleared, and some of the remaining poison has little effect on his body, and needs to be metabolized slowly through metabolism. Marcus, when do you plan to go back? Nan Yan, no plans for now, let's talk about it later. Marcus came back after a while. I understand, but you have to remember that you are not alone, I will always be behind you, and stand up for you when you need it. Nan Yan, go away, with your small body, what kind of hero are you? Nan Yan, protect yourself, don't distract me. Marcus looked at the message sent by Nan Yan on the screen, looked up at the ceiling, and didn't let his tears fall. He is younger than Nan Yan's real identity, and Nan Yan has always protected him like a sister. It was before, and it is still now. But he can't hide behind her all the time and be protected by her without any psychological pressure. He is a man, he should protect her. This time when he returns to China, he must find out what happened and how Nan Yan died. If it weren't for going to country M to get information for Nan Yan, he would never leave. Marcus gritted his teeth, rubbed his eyes, took his luggage, and checked whether he had put on the medicine Nan Yan gave him. After checking, he picked up his backpack and turned to leave the room. Hashtag. Nan Yan saw that Marcus didn't send any more messages, so she leaned her head and looked at the boring auction boredly. Qin Lu hooked her palm and asked softly, are you annoyed? No, brother, you don't bid for anything, why do you come to this auction? Nan Yan looked for a long time, and others basically called out a price once, but Qin De Lao came over like a boss, sitting here motionless. All the things auctioned above did not attract his attention at all. The whole time, his eyes were on her. Don't think she didn't notice it because she was playing with her phone. Qin Lu laughed softly, I can't help it. I have a commission from this auction. It's not right to take the money for nothing. Nan Yan. Okay. This is indeed what I should come. If you are bored, you can go to the rest area outside to rest for a while. I will notify you when the ginseng auction starts. Yes. Nan Yan really doesn't like this kind of drowsy environment. It's too boring. She glanced at Qin Lu who was still holding her big hand and motioned him to let go. Qin Lu laughed dumbly and reluctantly let go of the child's tender little hand. The lights in the auction venue were off, and there was only a bright light on the auction table. So Nan Yan left halfway and didn't attract too much attention. The rest area is connected to the auction venue, so there is no need to go out of the auction gate. There are buffet food and drinks for the banquet later. Nan Yan saw a strange black-brown fruit and took one to try it later. Seeing the cute cakes, she took two. It happened that she was a little hungry and could fill her stomach first. Just as she was sitting comfortably on the sofa, squinting her eyes and eating cakes, two men came into the lounge together. Nan Yan raised her eyebrows slightly, watching them approach her, still slowly eating the exquisite cake. Then, she took a tissue and wiped the corners of her mouth. The two men were obviously martial artists, tall, with muscles on their arms that almost burst their clothes. Standing in front of her, they were like two small mountains. "Beautiful Miss Dongfang, our master wants to see you, come with us." Nan Yan lazily leaned her head, her cold eyebrows slightly narrowed, covering the cold light flowing in her eyes. "Who sent you?" Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 227. You'll know when you see him. Beautiful Miss Dongfang, you'd better be sensible and take the initiative to follow us, otherwise we can't guarantee that we won't hurt you. The two kept their mouths shut and didn't mean to reveal the person behind them. Nan Yan thought for a while, stood up, and said lightly, "Lead the way." The two didn't seem to expect that Nan Yan would really cooperate so well. They were stunned for a moment. But they quickly came to their senses and took Nan Yan away one after the other. Nan Yan was so sensible, so they didn't need to threaten with violence. After all, no man could be so cruel as to hurt such a beautiful woman. The auction venue continued. They didn't take the road to the auction venue either. They came out of the lounge, walked through a long corridor, and then entered a room. The light in the room was a little dim, and the person sitting on the sofa was facing the door with his back. But from the back, he should be around 30 years old. The two men who brought her here stood at the door and didn't go in, letting Nan Yan go in by herself. Nan Yan casually looked around the room and touched the light switch on the wall. There was a slight sound. The dim room suddenly became as bright as day. "Who told you to turn on the light?" A low roar with anger suddenly sounded. Nan Yan walked over slowly in high heels. "Who are you?" The man turned around with a gloomy aura. Then a disfigured face was exposed in front of her. There was a hideous scar from the man's left eyebrow to the lower jaw, and his left eye was covered with a layer of black cloth. Judging from the concave arc of the black cloth, his left eye had disappeared. If you only look at the right half of his face, he can be considered handsome. But the scar on his left face and the eye covered with black cloth are very scary. Judging from his age, he is probably about 30 years old. Nan Yan naturally didn't know him. But with such clear features, it is estimated that if you go back and ask Qin Lu, you will know who he is. Hodge looked at Nan Yan sinisterly with his intact right eye. Nan Yan remained calm under her gaze, and even her expression did not change. Huo Qi snorted coldly, and resentment flashed in his eyes. The woman Qin Lu likes is indeed extraordinary. Nan Yan looked clear. "It seems that you ask someone to bring me here to threaten him with me." Smart Huo Qi did not deny it, and a gloomy smile appeared on his face, making him look even more creepy. Qin Lu is too strong. Every time he goes out, he is protected by someone. It is really difficult to touch him. I didn't expect that Mr. Qin, who has always been aloof from women, would actually be able to open up in terms of emotions. What's even more unimaginable is that he just flaunted his weakness and let you leave him. Huo Qi had been eyeing them since they left at noon. Qin Lu's pampering and care for Nan Yan along the way made him dispel the element of deliberate drama. Besides, with his understanding of Qin Lu, he disdained to do so. So, this woman definitely occupies a very important position in his heart. Now that this woman has fallen into his hands, he will soon be able to test how far she can make him go. Nan Yan smiled leisurely. "Have you ever thought about why he trusts me so much?" Huo Qi originally felt that he had won, but because of Nan Yan's words, he suddenly felt a little uneasy. Yes, why did he trust her to come out alone? There was not even a person around her. Huo Qi's eyes were sharp. You knew I would do something to you. I guess so, Nan Yan answered vaguely. Qin Lu just said that someone might come to cause trouble, but he was not sure who it was. Nan Yan also complained about him at the time, saying that a big tree attracts wind and people hate it. Huo Qi sneered, so what, you are now in my hands. No matter how powerful Qin Lu is, he can't save you unless he doesn't care about your life or death. Your words make me more certain that you are his weakness. He really wanted to tell all Qin Lu's enemies about this matter immediately. But it is probably useless. This time, he will kill Qin Lu. Who said I need him to save me? Nan Yan said this lightly and took the lead. Since she entered the door, she had been holding the silver needles on her fingertips, and she waved them out and pierced his acupuncture points. Huo Qi reacted quickly. When Nan Yan waved her hands, the sense of crisis stimulated his nerves. He rolled over quickly, not caring about his image, fell off the sofa, and sat on the ground. Even so, he did not completely avoid Nan Yan's silver needles. 2 silver needles were pierced into his body. But they deviated from the original acupuncture points and pierced into the flesh, which was just a little painful. Little girl, you are quite courageous. Huo Qi stood up viciously, took a step, and wanted to come over to catch Nan Yan. Nan Yan dodged flexibly, and counted carelessly. 1, 2, 3. What the hell are you counting? Haj was confused and flustered by her counting. Of course. Nan Yan's voice changed, and her red lips slowly uttered 2 words, 15. As he finished counting these 2 words, Haj suddenly felt that something was wrong with his body. His strength was draining away quickly, his legs were weak, and he knelt on the ground, his body falling forward. What did you do to me? Why couldn't he feel the existence of his body and control his hands and feet? Huo Qi was panicked. He was tricked by this damn woman. Nan Yan pressed the Bluetooth headset in her ear and said lightly, Wu Yu, follow the location and come to me. Wu Yu replied respectfully, Miss Nan, I'm waiting outside the door. Their master Qin would never let Miss Nan come out alone. If something happened to her, Master Qin would be heartbroken. The closed door was opened, and Wu Yu came in with 2 people. Seeing Haj lying on the ground like a dead dog, unable to move, Wu Yu widened his eyes and looked at her in disbelief. Miss Nan, what did you do to him? Nan Yan raised her eyebrows and asked with interest, why, do you want to try it too? No, not at all. Wu Yu shook his head like a rattle, then smiled, Miss Nan, leave this to me, you go find the young master first. Yeah. She guessed that the ginseng auction was coming soon, so she didn't delay here. After leaving the room, she saw 2 unconscious men lying at the door. They were the 2 who brought her here before. I didn't realize that Wu Yu's hands were also quite cruel. Returning to the lounge along the same route, Nan Yan picked an orange from the fruit plate. Walking to the sofa, peeled it, and ate it slowly and leisurely one by one. After eating an orange, her cell phone rang. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 228. After the call was connected, Qin Lu's low voice sounded slowly. Yan Yan, there are 2 more auction items to the ginseng, do you want to come back? Yes, I'll be there soon. After Nan Yan finished speaking, she hung up the phone neatly. She took a wet towel and wiped her hands clean before stepping on high heels and returning to the auction. The auction venue did not change because of her departure and arrival. She sat next to Qin Lu as usual. As soon as she sat down, her hand was grabbed by someone again. As a familiar cold fragrance approached, a warm voice asked in a low voice, Are you hurt? Look down on me, Nan Yan glanced at him lazily. No, I just care about you. Qin Lu could only laugh helplessly at the arrogant words of the little boy. He naturally would not look down on her. Otherwise, he would not let her leave on her own. Although he secretly arranged for her to be protected by secret guards, he would never do so if she did not have the ability. Wu Yu calls him Hodge. How did he get into trouble with you? Nan Yan was more concerned about the people who wanted to kill Qin Lu. After all, he was the first man she fell in love with. How could she watch him being bullied? Qin Lu pinched the girl's tender hand and said casually, I destroyed his face. If he hadn't been lucky, he would have been buried in the soil and turned into mud now. No wonder the resentment value is so high, Nan Yan said to herself, and then asked, from his tone, it seems that there are still many people who want your life. Qin Lu smiled slightly, it would be more appropriate to remove the word seems. Nan Yan. She didn't know what to be happy about being remembered by so many people. But thinking of her own situation, she muttered thankfully, fortunately. She had offended many people at the beginning. If she hadn't died and reborn, even if she had survived the laboratory by chance, she would probably not have been able to survive the pursuit of those people. That death, on the contrary, gave her the stable life she has now. But this kind of life will not last too long. Qin Lu heard her say okay, but didn't quite understand what she meant. Looking at her calm and indifferent face, he just smiled faintly and didn't ask. After skipping 2 auction items, the ginseng king that Nan Yan wanted was finally sent to the auction table. The auctioneer took the microphone and excitedly introduced the rarity and efficacy of this 500-year-old ginseng. Although it doesn't have the magical effect of reviving the dead. But even if it is not used as medicine, just slicing it and soaking it in water can delay aging, strengthen the body, and warm up and regulate chronic diseases. It can really prolong life. Therefore, this ginseng immediately aroused the interest of many wealthy people at the scene. Their money can be spent for several lifetimes, and the more such people are, the more they cherish their lives. When the auctioneer said that the auction could be held, a series of biddings were heard at the scene in an instant. The starting price is 3 million, start bidding. 10 million. 20 million. 50 million. 70 million. 100 million. Nan Yan couldn't help but hold her forehead when she heard the brutal bidding. Brother, I guess the price I expected before can't be achieved. Looking at this situation, it may be more than 1 billion. Is the world so crazy now? Go ahead and bid, brother will get a commission here anyway, and there will be a discount on the transaction price when the time comes. After Qin Lu said this, Nan Yan raised the sign. 1 billion. The cold voice resounded arrogantly and evilly at the scene. There was a moment of silence at the scene. Almost everyone subconsciously looked at the first row. And the expressions of those who were already in the first row also changed. Do you want to continue bidding? This price has exceeded the expectations of almost 95% of the people. The people who are still interested in bidding are almost the people in the first row. This beautiful lady from the east bid 1 billion. Is there a higher price than this? The auctioneer laughed a little exaggeratedly. There was no way, he was also scared. This is the female companion that the other person brought. If she wants it, she should tell them before the auction. How dare they take it out? Just give it to her directly. It can be both a good person and leave a good impression in Mr. Qin's heart. The auctioneer hoped that no one would bid again, and quickly give the ginseng to Nan Yan. As a result, there really was someone who dared to snatch things from Nan Yan. 1 billion and 50 million. The one who bid was the man sitting in the last row, in the corner. The auctioneer's hammer was about to fall, but when he heard this, he stopped stiffly in mid-air. Then he looked at Qin Lu in a panic. Nan Yan raised her eyebrows and raised the sign again carelessly. 1.5 billion. The man in the corner spoke again, 1.5 billion and 10 million. Puff. The auctioneer felt that cold sweat was coming out on his back. Is this, deliberately trying to compete with Mr. Qin? Qin Lu hooked Nan Yan's palm. Yan Yan, the price increase is too stingy, say a little more and see how much he can raise. Nan Yan raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Brother is right. Then you raised the sign and said, 5 billion. This lady has already offered 5 billion, and, is there anyone who wants to raise the price? The auctioneer's legs went weak. A ginseng plant was sold at a sky-high price of 5 billion. Even if it was a panacea, the price would probably not be so high. In the past, there were auction items that were higher than this one, but he had never been so shocked. A sinister look flashed across the eyes of the man in the corner. He wanted this 500-year-old ginseng king, but he didn't have that much. He had asked for 1.51 billion before, which was already his limit. He definitely couldn't afford 5 billion. But he must get this ginseng. Ordinary people, how could they bring out the maximum effect of this ginseng king? If it fell into their hands, this rare treasure would be ruined. The auctioneer didn't hear anyone else bidding, and he quickly banged the hammer. This was definitely the fastest time he banged the hammer in his career. 5 billion, first time. 5 billion, second time. 5 billion, third time, deal. Now this ginseng belongs to this lady, we congratulate her for her successful bid. After being shocked, the audience began to applaud. Because of Nan Yan's multi-billion-dollar bid, no one raised the price of the following auction items. The auction, which was supposed to be a long tug-of-war, ended an hour earlier. At 10 p.m., China time, after the last auction item was taken out, Qin Lu directly capped the price, not giving others a chance to bid a second price. Throughout the auction, Qin Lu and Nan Yan only bid for 2 items. However, the amount spent on the surface was the highest in the auction. A total of 15 billion. Off the court. Nan Yan leaned on her head and asked curiously, brother, how much commission can you get from this auction? Not much, about 10 billion. He took a commission based on a proportion. This auction had a part of his investment, and he was one of the shareholders. The items we just bid for will be discounted by 20%. 15 billion, when the time comes, you only need to pay 12 billion. Including the commission, the actual price of these 2 items is already over 10 billion, and the actual price is almost 2 billion. In total, the difference is 8 billion? Nan Yan. She is still working hard for 10 billion. But Mr. Qin only works here for 2 or 3 hours, and the income is so much. Besides, the value of the ginseng king in her hands is priceless. Coming out of the auction venue, they arrived at the banquet hall. Qin Lu reached out and tidied the hair by her ears for her. Do you want to eat something? Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter if he goes back. Qin Lu should have something else to deal with, so it's okay to stay here for a while. Sure enough, just as Nan Yan guessed, Qin Lu took the food for her and then left temporarily. Beautiful lady, can I sit here? A gorgeous and magnetic voice sounded beside Nan Yan while she was eating. Nan Yan put down the things in her hand, looked up indifferently at the foreign man standing in front of her, and said 3 words, no. Somewhat surprised. Strayer didn't seem to expect that he would be rejected. He was the man who had just snatched the ginseng king from Nan Yan. He thought that the light was dim at that time, and the tone he used when bidding was different from now, so Nan Yan couldn't tell the difference. And he was absolutely confident in his appearance. Just relying on this face, he has always been invincible among women. As a result, today he turned over here with Nan Yan. Nan Yan saw that he was still standing there and had no intention of moving, and her voice became cold, please go somewhere else, don't disturb me while I eat here. Sorry, I'm abrupt. Strayer smiled very gentlemanly and turned around to leave. But at the moment he turned around, his hand on his side made a small move. A drop of transparent liquid bounced from his fingertips into the food that Nan Yan was eating. He must get that ginseng king. Nan Yan's eyes flashed with gloom. In front of her, doing this little trick, playing the method of poisoning, isn't this like showing off one's skills in front of an expert? However, because of his action, Nan Yan also recognized his identity. He just tried to snatch ginseng from her, but he couldn't snatch it, so he came to play dirty. She lowered her eyes, and a sneer appeared at the corner of her lips. Pretending not to notice, she continued to eat her food. But she didn't move the part that Strayer had moved. After waiting for 5 minutes, she suddenly lay on the table. Strayer, who had been sitting not far from her, saw that she was tricked, and a gloomy sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he stood up and walked towards her. The dark guards hiding in the dark saw the scene and hurriedly wanted to come over. However, Nan Yan made a gesture to them, and they did not appear for the time being, and continued to wait and see. If Nan Yan had any signs of danger, they would definitely rush to save her as soon as possible. Strayer helped Nan Yan up and took her out of the banquet hall. When the people around saw it, no one stepped forward. The customs in foreign countries are more open. Besides, Strayer's appearance is so outstanding that no one would think of him as a pervert, a wolf, a pervert, or a bastard. The secret guard followed nervously. There are many restrooms next to the banquet hall. Strayer took Nan Yan to one of them and put her on the sofa. He half knelt opposite her, his deep blue eyes staring straight at Nan Yan's eyes. A vision appeared. Strange ripples appeared in his pupils, and he said seductively, "I am your master now. You must obey me unconditionally and execute all the orders I give you." Nan Yan's eyes, with a dull expression, suddenly burst into a gleam of light, and the intimidating pressure was released at that moment. She kicked him in the stomach, knocked him to the ground, then stepped on his chest, leaned over and looked at him coldly. "You want to be my master, are you worthy?" She didn't expect that he could hypnotize. Fortunately, her mental strength was strong enough, and when she was about to be hypnotized by him, she broke free and regained consciousness. She was still feeling a throbbing pain in her mind. On the surface, it was not visible at all. But Strayer was worse than her. He was backlashed by forcibly breaking free from his hypnosis and interrupting it. At this time, his brain was in a mess, as if someone in his brain was holding a stick, mashing his brain into a paste. His facial features were twisted in pain. He ignored the fact that he was being stepped on by Nan Yan and kept hitting his head against the ground to relieve the severe pain. The tightly closed door was knocked open. The secret guard heard the noise inside and was afraid that Nan Yan would be in danger, so he rushed in without caring. If Nan Yan was in any danger, they would die 100 times. "Miss Nan, are you okay?" Nan Yan frowned, retracted her feet, sat on the sofa, and said lightly, "Nothing." Strayer had not yet escaped from the backlash, his head had been knocked and bleeding, and the ground was already stained. For the time being, even if she wanted to ask questions, she couldn't. "Miss Nan, what's wrong with him?" The secret guard was a little frightened. Why did he start to hurt himself? Nan Yan rubbed her still swollen and painful head, and her voice was dull. "Mental backlash." Secret guard. They seemed to have discovered Miss Nan's extraordinary side again. After about 10 minutes, Strayer came back to his senses from the pain of wanting to smash his head. In a short time, he almost walked through hell and lost half his life. "Who are you?" Strayer raised his head in embarrassment, his eyes filled with deep fear. The dark guard snorted coldly, "You can't afford to offend someone." "Then do you know who I am?" Strayer didn't look at the dark guard, but looked at Nan Yan sinisterly. Originally, he just wanted to get the ginseng. But now, he changed his mind and wanted to make Nan Yan live a life worse than death. A woman who can interrupt his hypnosis and severely damage his nerves must not be let go. Nan Yan became interested, Then tell me, who are you? Strayer was about to say it, but suddenly remembered something and closed his mouth again. Why do you want to know? I will tell you. Het. Nan Yan sneered and looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. You can't tell it or not. Since her curiosity has been aroused, she must know. She turned her head to look at the secret guard standing beside her. Will you force a confession? The secret guard nodded quickly. Miss Nan, this is our specialty. Then I'll leave it to you. Nan Yan pointed at Strayer. Pry out all his secrets. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 229. Yes, Miss Nan. Looking at the time, Nan Yan prepared to go back and wait for Qin Lu. Just after standing up and taking 2 steps, she turned back and said, he is good at poisoning, and he carries a lot of poison on him, be careful. This time, she did not bring a medicine box, but a few silver needles, and there was no way to give them antidotes. They could only be careful on their own. Come to me again if you get poisoned. Okay, Miss Nan. Return to the restaurant. The food she had originally placed on the table had been taken away. But she had almost finished eating, so she took 2 pieces of cake as dessert. When Qin Lu came back, Nan Yan had finished the cake and was eating caramel pudding. Nan Yan licked her lips. Brother, is it done? Yet Qin Lu sat down beside her, put his hand on her shoulder, and asked softly, do you want to go home? Go back. Hashtag. After 3 hours of flight, they returned to Jinjinj, and it was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. After getting off the plane, Qin Lu drove her back to the old house. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the door of the old house. Seeing the girl's cute sleepy look, he couldn't help but stretched out his hand and pinched her little face. Yan Yan, if you don't wake up, I'll take you back to the hotel. Nan Yan opened her eyes, and her misty peach blossom eyes were a little sleepy. She waved his hand away, stretched and rubbed her eyes. Unbuckled the seat belt. Before getting off the car, she remembered what the head teacher said, and turned back to ask, brother, there is a parent meeting today, are you free? The only person who can be considered her parent is Anziran, except for Grandpayan. However, Grandpayan is not in good health. Although he has improved now, he can't be tired. Anziran is busy with the team's affairs and may not be able to spare time. If you don't have time, I'll ask the third brother. Anyway, it's just a formality, it doesn't matter who you find. If the head teacher didn't say that she had to be present, she didn't want to find anyone. Qin Lu's expression slightly changed. What time tomorrow? Nan Yan thought for a moment. Maybe in the morning, it will probably take an hour or 2. Call me in advance when the time comes. Yes. Yan Yan, go to bed early, I'll go back first. Nan Yan nodded and said, drive slowly on the road. After Nan Yan entered the old house, Qin Lu slowly turned the car around and went back to the hotel. Nan Yan pushed the door open and saw Zhang Nai dozing off on the sofa. Xiao Nai, why aren't you asleep yet so late? Zhang Nai rubbed her eyes. Sister? You're back. Then she scratched her head a little embarrassedly. I was sitting here and fell asleep without realizing it. Nan Yan was amused by her. Go back to your room and sleep. Yes. Sister, good night. Good night. Hashtag. The next day. The results of the monthly exam came out. Nan Yan was not surprised to be the first in the grade. And all subjects were full marks. Even Chinese, which is rarely full marks, was not deducted a single point. The Dean of Teaching couldn't stop smiling when he saw the results. Director Yu, Nan Yan is really amazing. The head teacher couldn't help but sighed while holding the report card. Of course I need to say that the dean looked proud and proud. I said, she can do it. The head teacher smiled and said, yes, you are right. Humph, she did well in the exam this time. I'll see and give her a little reward when the time comes. The dean was in a really good mood and was already thinking about asking his wife to cook a few more hard dishes for lunch. It was a celebration for her. Xiao Yu, don't go to the staff canteen at noon today. Let's eat together in the office. Okay, then I'll come over for lunch at noon. Now I'll go to the class first. Go ahead. The dean replied with a smile. The class meeting was scheduled in the morning, taking up the time of the first and second classes. So the head teacher took the report card and prepared to go over to notify the students, and while announcing the results, let them call their parents over. The dean sat behind his desk, looking at Nan Yan's results, with unstoppable satisfaction in his eyes. While watching, he nodded and muttered praises. Suddenly, his mobile phone on the table lit up. Someone sent him a message. He took it and unlocked it, and the message popped up completely. When he saw the photo sent by the other party, his face suddenly changed. He didn't hold the phone firmly, and it slipped from his hand, fell on the table, and bounced to the ground. After a second of hesitation, the dean hurried to pick up the phone, breathing rapidly, and looking at the screen eagerly. The photo was his wife. But his wife, who was originally at home, closed her eyes at this time, and was tied with ropes. Looking at the background, she was stuffed in the trunk of a car. She was still wearing the clothes she sent him out in the morning. Who kidnapped Xiaojun? Just when the dean was anxious, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. The dean did not even hesitate and chose to answer it directly. Who are you? What grudges do you have against me? Why kidnap my wife? He didn't know who he had offended. But Xiaojun would never offend anyone. She is kind and gentle by nature, and she won't quarrel or cause conflicts with others. So, it can only be because of him. On the phone, a gloomy male voice said. You Xiwen, right? You also saw that your wife is in our hands. If you want her to live, you'd better do what I say. Don't hurt my wife, please, don't hurt my wife. The dean held the phone and begged, you said, as long as I can do it, I will do it. Just don't hurt her. You bring your student Nan Yan to XXX tonight to exchange your wife. If you can't bring her here, then we can only vent our anger on your wife. Your wife is well maintained, mature, beautiful, and very attractive to men. Don't say it. The dean shouted with some out-of-control emotions, if you dare to bully my wife, I won't let you go. That depends on your performance, Yu Ziwen, you have 1 day to think about it, 8 o'clock in the evening, no more waiting after that. After the man finished speaking, he hung up the phone directly. The dean's emotions were almost out of control because of his concern for his wife. He pushed away the chair beside him and ran out with his mobile phone. Just as he was about to open the door, the office door was pulled open by someone outside. He rushed in too hastily and could not stop, and he bumped into the person who came in. Nan Yan did not expect that she would encounter the dean rushing out in such a disorderly manner as soon as she arrived. If she moved aside, the dean would probably roll down the stairs. So Nan Yan moved aside a little, then stretched out her hand and grabbed him. After he stood firm, she naturally let go of his hand. Dean, what makes you so anxious? When the dean saw Nan Yan, he remembered what the kidnapper of his wife said. He wanted to take Nan Yan to exchange for his wife. The other party's target was Nan Yan. He forced himself to be calm and hide the panic in his heart. Yan Yan, I'm fine. He couldn't use Nan Yan to exchange for his wife. Even if this happened because of Nan Yan, he couldn't hurt her. Although the child didn't say anything, he could feel that she had feelings for him. In her heart, she probably regarded him as an elder in the family. And he also treated her as his own child, loved her and took care of her. She had experienced so much pain and grief before, how could he take advantage of her trust in him and push her into the abyss? He saved his wife himself, and couldn't hurt an innocent child. He suppressed his emotions and smiled reluctantly. The class meeting will start soon, you go to the class quickly. Really? Okay. Nan Yan looked unconvinced. If you have anything, you can tell me, maybe I can help. Really, nothing, you go back to the class. Okay, Nan Yan nodded, but, Dean, I'm not bragging, I can do a lot of things. If you have something, don't keep it in your heart, say it, I can really help you. The dean smiled bitterly in his heart. No matter how good she is at studying and how strong her computer skills are, she is still a child. How can she fight a group of kidnappers? I know, if there is anything in the future, I will find you. Yeah. Nan Yan saw that the dean refused to say anything, so she didn't insist on asking. She had come to the office to find the dean, but seeing that he had something important to do, she did not stay any longer. Watching Nan Yan walk towards the class, the dean hurriedly left the school. He was going to call the police. This was the most correct thing to do after a family member was kidnapped. Hashtag. On the way, Nan Yan met Zhang Wenqian. She hadn't seen her for a few days, and she seemed like a completely different person. Not only had she lost a lot of weight, but she also looked extremely gloomy. Zhang Wenqian looked at her with resentment, and her eyes were filled with the ruthlessness of wanting to torture her to death. Last time in the box, because Nan Yan asked her to drink a whole bottle of red wine with added ingredients, she and those men indulged themselves for a whole night. When the effect of the drug wore off the next day, she and the other two girls were almost broken. However, after suffering these losses, she could only swallow her anger. She gave the two girls a sum of money to appease the situation, so that the matter was not made a big deal. And Mr. Wang and those men also felt guilty, not only agreed to sign the contract, but also added a lot of investment. The Zhang family successfully signed the contract. However, the price was too high. She rested at home for several days before she came back to life. These days, whenever she closed her eyes, she would see those indulgent scenes. When she fell asleep, she would be dragged into a nightmare, replaying everything that night again and again in her dream. She could never go back to the past. Nan Yan Zhang Wenqian gritted her teeth and said gloomily, I won't let you go. You wait for me. She didn't dare to attack Nan Yan. She still remembered Nan Yan's terrifying skills in the private room. She couldn't be stupid again and rush up to fight herself. Nan Yan just sneered at Zhang Wenqian's provocation and harsh words, and walked past her. Zhang Wenqian's whole body was almost shaking with anger. In the end, she gritted her teeth, retracted her sight, and walked towards her class. Hashtag. Meeting Zhang Wenqian didn't make Nan Yan care much. People like Zhang Wenqian were not worthy of her as an opponent. She is still thinking about the dean. It seems that I need to check it out. When I returned to the classroom, the head teacher was talking about the class meeting. The head teacher saw her and smiled. Nan Yan is here. I just told the students that we will have a parent meeting this morning. The time is about 8 to 10 o'clock. Don't forget to tell your parents. Yes. Nan Yan walked to her seat and sat down, then took out her mobile phone and sent a message to Qin Lu. Brother, the class meeting time is from 8 to 10 in the morning, are you free? Her message was sent, and soon Qin Lu replied, yes, I will be there later. Nan Yan, okay. Qin Lu is free, so she doesn't need to bother Shen Junqing anymore. Now there is still half an hour before the class meeting, just in time to check the dean's affairs. On the podium, the head teacher handed out the report cards, explained a few more words, and prepared to go back to the office. Seeing that she was leaving, Nan Yan put her mobile phone into her school uniform pocket and quickly followed. Homeroom teacher, Wait a minute. The homeroom teacher stood there and turned around. What's wrong? Nan Yan. Nan Yan walked up to her and said, I want to ask, when you saw the dean this morning, did he do anything unusual? Dean? Nothing unusual. The homeroom teacher was a little surprised, and then smiled. But because you got full marks in all subjects in the monthly exam, he was a little overexcited, and told me not to go to the staff restaurant at noon, but to go to the office to eat with you. Well, then you go ahead. Nan Yan nodded to her and went back to the class. Since the dean did not do anything unusual when the homeroom teacher was there, it must have happened during that period of time after the homeroom teacher left. Seeing that he was in a hurry and uneasy, he must have suddenly found out something that made him anxious. Nan Yan took out the notebook in her school bag, turned it on, and went to adjust the surveillance in the office. The school's firewall had been reinforced by her, and if she wanted to enter, it would be like entering her own back garden, without any effort. After adjusting the surveillance, she raised her eyes and glanced at the classmates around her. She took out a headset from her school bag, put it on, and started watching the surveillance. Fast forward to the moment when the head teacher left the office, leaving only the dean of studies. Although she couldn't hear what the person on the phone said, she could only know what the dean of studies said. Someone kidnapped his wife and threatened him to do something. Nan Yan had a hunch that it had something to do with her. The surveillance showed the dean of studies hurriedly leaving the office, and Nan Yan clicked the times in the upper right corner. Regardless of whether this matter had anything to do with her, she couldn't just stand by and watch when her teacher's wife was kidnapped. She closed the notebook cover, put her school bag back, and went outside again. After leaving the classroom, Nan Yan leaned on the railing and called the dean. Where are you? The dean, who was about to enter the police station, tried to pretend to be nonchalant and asked, What's wrong, Yan Yan? Nan Yan said calmly, I'll help you find a solution for the matter of the teacher's wife, don't do anything stupid. How do you know? The dean was shocked. Did they also look for you? Nan Yan neither admitted nor denied. Come back first, we'll talk face to face. Also, don't call the police yet. Qin Ye's little ancestor is a real boss. Author, Junanan. Chapter 230. Yan Yan. The dean's voice was hoarse. His hand was tightly holding the phone, trying to hold back the emotion that was about to break. Nan Yan whispered, Trust me, I can save the master's wife, and save her intact. The dean was silent for a long time before he responded hoarsely, Okay. He knew that Nan Yan was just a little girl, but he chose to believe her. Xiao Jun, wait for me, I will definitely save you. Hashtag Atlantis Hotel. Wu Yu looked helplessly at the young master who was seriously choosing clothes. Their young master was a clothes rack, no matter what he wore, he would be handsome. Usually, when attending various large-scale meetings, he would just wear a formal suit casually. Why was he so serious today just to attend Miss Nan's parent-teacher meeting? Qin Lu looked at the 6 or 7 suits in front of him and remained silent. Wu Yu asked cautiously, Master, how about I call a stylist? No need. Qin Lu picked out the iron gray suit from a pile of suits, a color he usually doesn't wear very often. It's just a parent-teacher meeting, no need to be so grand. Wu Yu. You still know that it's just a parent-teacher meeting? Just this set. Qin Lu took the clothes to change. When he came out again, Wu Yu couldn't help but cover his chest. Damn, this is too handsome. I'm used to seeing the young master wearing black abstinence style, now suddenly changing a color, it's a whole new sense of beauty. Oh ah! Why are there such stunning people in the world? Why is the great goddess Nuwa so unfair? We are all human beings, why can the young master be so beautiful? What's more helpless is, why can't he be immune to the impact and temptation brought by his face even though he guards the young master every day? Qin Lu glanced at him indifferently. Wu Yu lowered his head quickly. As a man, he is really too self-abased. Hashtag. Parents from various classes began to come to school one after another. Nan Yan did not wait for Qin Lu in the class, but went to the office to wait for the dean to come back. The dean came in a bit lost, and the moment he saw Nan Yan, it was like seeing a savior. He walked quickly to her side, grabbed her shoulders, and asked anxiously, Yan Yan, do you really have a way to save Xiao Jun? Nan Yan replied, well, don't worry, relax first. He was not in a good state. The dean was not relaxed at all, his eyes were full of red bloodshot, and his lips were a dark purple. Nan Yan pressed on his wrist, and after half a minute, she stretched out her hand and poked several acupuncture points on his chest. The dean's face began to turn red, and suddenly his throat rolled, and he opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of dark red blood. After spitting out this mouthful of blood, the dean felt that his chest, which was stuffy and painful to the point of exploding, was relieved a lot. However, he had no time to care about these changes in himself, and looked at Nan Yan anxiously. Give me your phone first. The dean quickly gave her the phone. After unlocking the phone, Nan Yan turned to the photo sent by the other party, and then found the phone call the other party made to the dean. The computer on the desk was turned on, and she sat directly over and began to locate the phone number. After successfully locating, the map showed that the number was still moving quickly. It seems that the other party has not brought Luo Xiaojun to the destination. Nan Yan put her hands on the keyboard again and tapped quickly. She hacked into the other party's phone, turned on the microphone, and turned on the camera on the phone. The voice of the other party's conversation came over, but because the phone was in her pocket, she couldn't see the other party's picture clearly. The third step is to locate the car they are riding now. Nan Yan returned the phone to the dean and stood up. Dean of Education, the other party's target is me, and my teacher's wife was implicated by me. I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer to this matter. The Dean of Education shook his head and said, Yan Yan, don't put too much pressure on yourself. This is not your fault. The fault is those bad guys. I'm going to save my teacher's wife now. You wait here and wait for my news. The Dean of Education grabbed her. No, it's too dangerous for you to go alone. I want to go with you. Nan Yan thought about it and nodded, okay. It's probably a bit too much to ask the Dean of Education to stay here and wait for news. The one who was kidnapped was his lover. Because of being too anxious before, he was forced to suffer internal injuries. If she hadn't discovered it in time, he might not be able to wait for his teacher's wife to come back, and he would fall down first. Nan Yan first sent a message to Qin Lu, asking him to go directly to class 4 of senior 2 to wait for her after he came to school. Qin Lu, little friend, you are not in school. Nan Yan replied calmly, well, the Dean of Education has something urgent for me to help. You can help me hold a parent-teacher meeting first. Qin Lu, okay. Although the child is not here for the time being, he, as a parent, still has to arrive in time. The results of the monthly exam last weekend will be announced today. It seems that he should prepare a gift for her. Nan Yan didn't care what Qin Lu was thinking. She came to the parking lot with the dean. The dean was about to drive himself, but Nan Yan opened the door of the cab before him. I'll drive. The dean looked at her and asked, do you have a driver's license? No, Nan Yan answered calmly, but there's no time to worry about these now, get in. The Dean of Studies said nothing else, turned the car around and went to the passenger side. Fasten your seat belt. Nan Yan kindly reminded, and then drove out. When she was in school, her speed was normal. After getting on the highway and leaving the campus area, the Dean of Studies finally understood why Nan Yan wanted to drive. At this speed, he felt that he could drive directly to the racetrack. He gritted his teeth, holding the seat belt across his chest tightly with both hands, and did not dare to make a sound, for fear of disturbing her. In an oncoming Rolls-Royce, Wu Yu looked at the car in shock as it almost flew up, and it passed by him in less than a second. "Master, did you see it?" Wu Yu was a little emotional. The driver is so awesome to drive an ordinary car at the speed of a racing car. Qin Lu's tone was very indifferent. "Do you want to try it too?" Wu Yu immediately shivered. "No, I dare not." Qin Lu's tone was cold. "Then don't look around." Wu Yu, "Got it, master." Hashtag. Don't say Wu Yu was shocked. When she flew in front of the Rolls-Royce, Nan Yan also felt guilty. Fortunately, Qin Lu didn't know she was in the car. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to explain it to him. It seems that she should lie less in the future, to avoid embarrassment when being exposed. Concentrating her mind, Nan Yan sped all the way to chase the kidnapper of Luo Xiajun. The head teacher's face turned pale and his nerves were tense by the speed of the car. It was a bit difficult to let a person who was already over 50 to experience the speed of the car. But he knew that time was life. Nan Yan wanted to catch up with the other party as soon as possible and save his wife. No matter how uncomfortable he was, he had to endure it. At this time, the two kidnappers who kidnapped Luo Xiajun were driving the car to the place agreed by the employer without hurry. While walking, they were still making some dirty jokes. And from time to time, they mentioned the woman they stuffed in the trunk. The phone of the person who called had been connected to Nan Yan's phone. The sound was played out loud, and she and the head teacher could hear those words. When the dean heard that they actually wanted to take advantage of the time before they arrived to attack his wife, his face suddenly changed. His anger and anxiety were completely out of control and he was almost going crazy. "Yan Yan, drive faster, please drive faster." He was afraid that they would be late and let his wife suffer those insults. Nan Yan held the steering wheel tightly with both hands, and said in a cold voice, "Don't worry, the teacher's wife will be fine." "Okay, okay." The dean was actually in a state of panic now. At this time, Nan Yan became his only support. He didn't expect that he would put all his beliefs and bets on a girl. But Nan Yan's confidence and calmness made him subconsciously trust her. Hashtag. The car that kidnapped Luo Xiajun stopped at an abandoned factory in the suburbs. After they got out of the car, they opened the trunk and lifted out Luo Xiajun, who had woken up and was looking at them with horror. Luo Xiajun pretended to be calm, suppressed the panic in her heart, and asked, "Who are you? Why do you want to kidnap me?" The kidnapper number one who called laughed and said, "We take money from people and help them get rid of disasters. We have no grudges against you and have no intention of hurting you. As long as you cooperate, wait for your man to bring the girl here, and he can take you away." "What girl?" Luo Xiajun asked doubtfully. But then a thought came to her mind. Could it be Nan Yan, who Lao Yu often mentioned to her recently, who made people feel sorry for her but was very strong and capable? Although she had never seen Nan Yan in person, she was the first student that her husband could admire so much. Even if they had never met, Luo Xiajun had a good impression of Nan Yan. So when Lao Yu asked her to prepare a meal every day at noon, she considered that the girl was growing up and needed nutrition, so she made delicious food for her in different ways every day. "She is just a poor girl, what do you want to do to her? Ha, you can't even take care of yourself, but you still care about that girl. How do you know if your husband will bring her here for you in the end?" Kidnapper number two deliberately provoked her, "If he doesn't come, you will have to have fun with us two brothers today. Although you are not young, you look good. I guess mature women are more attractive than young women." Luo Xiajun was frightened by his words and turned pale. She gritted her teeth and didn't say anything. The two kidnappers saw that she was so boring, so they dragged her into the abandoned factory and threw her on the ground casually. Luo Xiajun didn't cry like a little girl. Because her body was tied with ropes, she struggled to rub against the corner of the wall and sat up against the corner. After that, she lowered her head and thought about how to save herself. Her husband is a very upright man with a positive outlook on life and his own beliefs. Asking him to exchange her for a girl would probably be more painful than killing him. But he is even more reluctant to let her suffer. Now he must be in a difficult situation, bearing greater pressure than her. She understands her husband. They grew up together as childhood sweethearts and have been together for more than 40 years. No matter what choice he makes, she won't blame him. Hashtag. In the car, the Dean of Studies was breathing rapidly and his face was flushed. His mouth was full of the taste of blood. While racing, Nan Yan saw his situation and frowned slightly. Then, she held the steering wheel with one hand, took out a small medicine bottle from her pocket with her right hand and handed it to him. Take 2 pills. The Dean of Studies took the medicine bottle with trembling hands, and opened the lid several times before tilting the bottle mouth to pour it into his palm. Because of the intense emotional fluctuations, the tension of nerves caused muscle stiffness, and his movements were not accurate. He used too much force, and nearly half of the small brown pills inside were spilled out. The Dean of Studies quickly raised the mouth of the bottle and said apologetically, "Yan Yan, I'm sorry." Nan Yan looked straight ahead. "It's okay, you take the medicine first." The Dean of Studies took 2 pills as Nan Yan said. Then he picked up some of the pills that fell on him and put them back. But there were still many pills that fell under the seat. Those pills were already dirty, and I'm afraid there was no way to get them back. Those medicines are worthless, so if they fall, they fall. This bottle of medicine is for you. Take 1 pill each morning and evening. Originally, this bottle of medicine was prepared for Lin Zion, and she was going to send it to her after school this afternoon. But when she took the pulse of the Dean of Teaching, she knew that his heart was not good either. In addition, he was too stimulated today, and his heart was in a critical condition, so she gave it to him first. After rescuing the master's wife, she will make more appropriate medicine for him to help him regulate his heart. Okay. The Dean of Teaching didn't have the mind to care about other things now, so he didn't think about how Nan Yan knew medical skills. But he believed that Nan Yan would not harm him. The car arrived in the suburbs. It was only a dozen minutes away from the time when the kidnappers arrived. Parking the car a little further away, Nan Yan unbuckled the seat belt. "Wait here, I'll go save the master's wife." "You alone?" the Dean of Teaching said quickly. "No, it's too dangerous." He thought that Nan Yan had found other people to help rescue. As a result, when he got here, he found that there were only the 2 of them. How could he let a little girl like Nan Yan take risks? Nan Yan leaned on the car door, her sparkling peach blossom eyes were speechless. "Dean, can you trust me a little more?" "Wait here, we'll be back in 10 minutes. After saying that, she closed the car door without caring what the Dean said, and ran quickly to the scrap factory. The Dean wanted to go with her. But he found that the car door was locked and he couldn't open it. "Yan Yan, Yan Yan." He leaned on the car door and slapped the car window a few times. Nan Yan didn't look back at all, and could only watch her walk farther and farther. "What should I do?"